It's me. I'm being creepy. Ooh.
On November 12, 1915, Harry J. Haiselden, chief surgeon at a Chicago hospital, was informed that a baby had been born with serious disabilities. Alan Bollinger had been born with multiple complications, including a missing ear, pectus excavatum, and serious digestive problems. After examining the boy, Chicago Health Commissioner John Dill Robertson suggested that he might be saved with an operation, later writing to the American Medical Association that he
was startled to observe that this was not the defective baby I had expected to see.
Startled he was, because Chief Surgeon Haiselden was refusing to operate, refusing any care at all for the infant. In fact, Dr. Haiselden encouraged the boy's parents to let the child die,
lest he live a life of idiocy.
Alan J. Bollinger died on November 17th, 1915, aged 5 days old. And he wouldn't be the last baby that Haiselden allowed to die. Just the following month, in December of that year, he approved the passive death of baby Grace Verder, a newborn whose life also could have been saved by an operation, of whom her attending physician, Dr. Faltermeyer, said,
"This baby would have been an imbecile. It would have hated its parents and have been a reproach to the humanity that brought it to life."
According to Dr. Haiselden, baby Grace
could have been saved by an operation for spina bifida, which caused the death of the baby. But it is 1,000 times better dead.
The deaths drew a lot of public attention, not least because Haiselden contacted the press himself, in order to not only justify his own decisions, but to further the cause of eugenics. Due to the public attention, an inquiry into baby Bollinger's death was held. In his defense, Haiselden said,
"I say again that it is our duty to defend ourselves and the future generations against the mentally defective we allow to grow and suffer among us, and add to our burden and our problem."
Despite finding that there was
no evidence from the physical defects in the child that it would have become mentally or morally defective,
and that
a prompt operation would have prolonged and perhaps saved the life of the child.
The expert jury decided not to charge Haiselden with any wrongdoing, rather suggesting that in the future, these decisions should be made by at least 2 doctors instead of 1. Haiselden became famous. He would routinely travel around the country, helping to decide whether babies should live or die. He was invited to speak at clubs and societies, and the baby Bollinger case sparked a surge in eugenics debates and practices, as well as an outpouring of support for Haiselden. Unlike the children in his care, Haiselden wasn't about to let his fame die, and so he went on to co-write and star in a feature film depicting the Bollinger case, eugenics propaganda film The Black Stork, which was published in 1917. It depicts a mother being warned by the good Dr. Haiselden of the dangers of allowing her disabled baby to live. She is shown a vision of her child's future in a dream. He becomes a destitute criminal who goes on to murder the surgeon who saved his life, after almost murdering his own mother out of hatred and resentment and blame. She awakes and gives the doctor permission to withdraw care, killing her baby, which is shown floating into the embrace of Jesus. As critics of the film point out, the disabled baby only becoming good in death. The Black Stork is thought to be the first film depiction of a child destined to do evil acts, a child born with some kind of unnatural genetic defect which simply can't be nurtured away. A child who must die. Since then, movies about evil children have become an entire genre, a trope which no horror movie binge would be without. Starting with the 1956 classic The Bad Seed, starring Patty McCormack and Nancy Kelly, about sweet, dear little Rhoda, a young girl with a murderous secret, born of bad blood concealed by the family. Upon finding out that she was adopted and that her real mother was a murderer, Rhoda's mother, Christine, cries out that she ought to have been left to die so that she would not have passed on these evil genes to her daughter.
Why didn't you just leave me there? Why didn't I die in the orchard and end the agony there? It's that awful place and that evil woman, my mother.
Don't let it hurt you now. It's past.
Daddy, I wish I had died then. I wish.
It hasn't mattered where you came from. You've been sound and sweet and loving. You've given me more than I ever gave or could ever repay. Kenneth loves you, and you've made him infinitely happy. And Rhoda's a sweet, perfectly sound little girl.
Who is she, Father? Is she?
What has she done?
It's as if she'd been born blind.
Christine decides that her child must die, and so gives her a lethal dose of sleeping tablets before shooting herself. Both mother and daughter survive the ordeal, but later, evil little Rhoda dies in a lightning strike. Phew. As audiences, we are privy to the blood-red flags that these evil children leave flying in their wake. We watch, frustrated, as the parents and teachers excuse the evidence, excuse the child because, after all, they are a child. The kind-hearted adults who suggest that the child might simply benefit from more care, they are the fools of the show. The ones walking right into the trap, the ones who refuse to believe that the child must die.
And it's just so obvious as well which ones are the wrong ones, isn't it? You know the moment in horror movies where they go outside to see what the noise was and they leave the door wide open for the killer to get in, and you're like, oh my god, you stupid f***. I hope the killer does get you, actually. I hope they get in there and that they you, and it's really, really horrible, and you and then they scoop out your brains if they can find any. Well, that moment in the creepy kid genre of horror films happens when the adult empathizes with the child, when they refuse to believe that they might be evil. And it's just so obvious. There's so many signs. I mean, oh shit, they're coming.
Creepy kids in creepy kid movies have stuff in common. They are seemingly emotionless or close to it. They have an extremely flat affect, showing no emotion on their evil little faces, unless, of course, they are pretending, acting, masking. They are unusually mature, lacking the childishness of their peers, often being old-fashioned, adult-like, focused or unusually tidy. They might not speak, or speak only on rare occasions. Or, conversely, they might be incredibly charming, talkative, outgoing, and overtly manipulative. They are often highly intelligent, outwitting the adults around them. They are the child with few or no friends, perhaps with unusual interests or fixations, and they may have a rather odd way of speaking or moving, and, well, you can see where this is going. You know, I was something of a creepy kid myself. I definitely never murdered anyone, just so we're clear.
But my mum called me spooky. She thought that I knew things that I shouldn't know. She thought I was strange and emotionless. For my autism assessment, she said that I never really showed real emotions. Thanks, Mum. She used to talk about my tendency to line up my toys and how tidy I was, how I would arrange my books in certain orders. She'd talk about how I didn't play with the other kids, or at least not in the same way as the other kids. She really didn't like that I had a strong interest in the paranormal, the supernatural, in witchcraft and the occult. She was afraid of that stuff, and she made sure I knew it. She said I was inviting ghosts into the house. Ridiculous. I mean, there was that one time where we were watching Uri Geller on TV doing his spoon bending stunt, right? And we were trying to do it at home, and like she looked away for a second. I just fully bent my spoon and then pretended that I'd Uri Gellered it for a few years or so, and she fully believed me until I came clean. That probably didn't help. But it got to the point where even I was becoming almost nearly convinced that I had some sort of psychic ability. In fact, I made a video about it in which I describe all of the supposedly and allegedly spooky things that I got up to. Things which my mother both admired and feared. But I wasn't psychic, obviously, because psychics are, all of them, hideous frauds. Scum, in fact, of the earth. And if you hate psychics as much as I do, then you might be interested in this video by my good friend, a Dr. Kaylin Conrad, which I actually helped to write. But when I think about it, I wasn't really spooky at all, to be honest. I was just autistic. I noticed things that others didn't. I did a lot of snooping, and I had decent pattern recognition, which meant that I made decent guesses sometimes. I was sensitive to light, to sound, to touch. I had my special interests, and that interest didn't often extend to other children. I had a flat affect. I was mature for my age. I was unchildlike. Oh, for fuck's sake, you scared the shit out of me. Sneaking around like an absolute creep. Can't a ghoul silently admire a corner in peace these days, or what? Supernatural powers are often attributed to autistic kids. Way more than you would think. That video I talked about, it was mostly about indigo children. The idea that kids who normal people would call neurodivergent, that they are actually alien-like beings sent to guide humanity towards a brighter future. It's no pressure. In my Aspie Supremacy video, I get into starseeds and Pleiadians and other theories of autistic kids actually being aliens, or the next stage in human evolution, which is an extremely eugenicsy idea if you ask me. That's why my thumbnail is all, it's eugenics, because it's eugenics. Also, that is not how evolution works.
Children of the Damned was the 1964 sequel to the 1960 classic and much better film, Village of the Damned. In Village of the Damned, we learn that something has caused all the childbearing aged women in a village to immaculately conceive strange little babies with blonde hair and golden eyes. These babies grow into children who can communicate telepathically and who control the will of those around them. It is strongly implied that this was the work of aliens and that these kids are not human. But in Children of the Damned, it is established that this is not the case. At least not for these new kids who've popped up around the world. The other ones got blown up. After testing their cells, scientists determined that they are actually human, but that they represent an unprecedented jump in genetic development, that they are actually highly advanced mutants.
I think they are the cells of man, advanced maybe a million years.
The next stage, inhuman evolution. The wrong idea that humans evolved in a linear manner from mostly like monkeys to actually human, well, that provided a much better rationale for racism.
People with autism are operating on a higher plane of humanity. They hold up half the sky. They are the next stage of human evolution.
I believe that those with autism are part of the next stage in human evolution. They think and see things on a level we can't. Evolution has not perfected it yet, but maybe the normal people, as society has labelled us, are the weird ones for not evolving.
I low-key think that increasing rates of Asperger's and autism is the next stage of human evolution. Developing a sixth sense almost that presents itself with sensory issues.
Autism is the next stage of human evolution, and you're apparently too ignorant and ableist to understand the distinction between illness and divergence.
Know why more and more autistic people exist? It's nothing bad. It's not being caused by a product or a vaccine. What we are here referring to as autism is actually the next stage of human evolution. Calling us a disease is simply the old model diagnosing the new as defective.
Autism is the next stage of evolution. Cope and seethe neurotypical.
They are expressionless, speak only when necessary, and behave like miniature and very serious adults. These movies were intended to be allegories to nuclear power during the Cold War. The idea of an uncontrollable power being unleashed onto the world. The question of whether or not to destroy these children who can do such great and terrible deeds is a question of nuclear abolition. But at least in the 1964 sequel, we are also called to question the possibilities of eugenics. Might genes produce such power? And if so, what to do with it? Usually the fear of the eugenicists is a weakening of the gene pool. But here, the fear is that those at the top of the pyramid might get knocked down a peg or two.
It's a good thing that neither evolution nor genetics work in the way that eugenicists think they do, though, isn't it? You know, for a bunch of people so concerned with intelligence, they don't seem to bother much with scientific fact. The idea that we might breed ourselves better humans, well, this is one side of the eugenics coin known as positive eugenics. The other side is negative eugenics. It's Dr. Haiselden. It's California forcibly sterilizing tens of thousands of people. It's the Nazis and their T4 program, or child euthanasia, as they called it. It's the mass murder of 250,000 disabled Germans. It's the idea that we must remove the bad seeds. So are creepy kids in horror movies autistic-coded? I don't know, a bit sometimes. While there might not be many overtly autistic-coded creepy kid characters, in my opinion, the way that these kids give creepiness is by deploying personality traits which are usually associated with autism. I watched so many movies for this video, and I wanted to focus on ones in which the child themselves is the antagonist in some way. So let's have a look at these creepy little shits.
Rhoda in The Bad Seed isn't autistic-coded, But the things that set her apart from the others, the reason why her mother first suspected her, were she doesn't dress like the other kids, wearing dresses every day instead of the blue jeans that were fashionable. She doesn't seem to have any friends. She's old-fashioned and never gets dirty, always keeping her room tidy.
There's a mature quality about her that's disturbing in a child, and my husband and I thought that a school like yours, where you believe in discipline and the old-fashioned virtues, might, well, perhaps teach her to be more of a child. Yes, I know what you mean.
But in the 2018 remake, Emma seems much more autistic-y to me. She's extremely focused and serious, unlike the exuberant Rhoda. She is also tidy and only has one friend at a time, both of whom she murders. She's seen practicing her responses in the mirror, practicing facial expressions, something I and many other autistic people have done, a part of masking, a way to avoid being bullied or singled out. But here it is a very obvious sign of duplicity, of ill intent. And Emma is more evil than a lot of the characters I observed. She's certainly worse than Rhoda. But the eugenics of the original movie are alive and well in this remake.
Dr. Michalowicz, an expert on violent child sociopaths, explains.
The violence seems to be inside them, buried like a bad seed. Eventually it grows, and once it starts, it doesn't seem to stop.
They cite a type of criminal born with no capacity for remorse or guilt, no feeling of right or wrong, born with the kind of brain that may have been normal in humans 50,000 years ago.
Nonsense.
It's as if these children were born blind, permanently.
But that's horrible.
It's just that they are bad seeds, plain bad from the beginning, and nothing can change them.
Emma is irredeemably evil for absolutely no reason other than genetics. She will murder absolutely anyone for pretty minor reasons. She caused the death of her father because she preferred to live with her aunt. She's worse than the original character and more autistic-coded. Speaking of irredeemable evil for no reason other than genetics, Joshua is a 2007 thriller about a young boy, a musical prodigy, who speaks in an oddly unemotional and mature way.
You know, you don't have to love me. That's not like a rule or something.
You know what there are rules about though, Joshua? Attempted murder. He can figure out how magic tricks are done, showing excellent observational abilities and pattern recognition. He solves all of his test questions before the other kids, and he has a special interest in Egyptology. He prefers to spend his time in museums, and he purposefully sends his parents insane, framing them because he preferred to live with his uncle who appreciates his musical talents. I'm waiting for someone to make the Joshua seed, where he and Emma shack up and spawn the world's most evil child.
I'll give you $5 if I can throw a rock at you.
What exactly happened to Joshua? That's what's puzzling to me.
You know, I think the idea is that some people are just born that way, you know, chemically imbalanced, and I think it's not necessarily anybody's fault. I think the whole idea is that it's not the parents' fault. It's just some people are chemically that way.
The children in Village and Children of the Damned are emotionless, have flat affects, and only communicate with words when needed. Lucas in 2017 comedy horror Little Evil is described by his stepdad as disliking eye contact and being very serious and not showing emotion.
Never really looks me in the eye. Doesn't talk much, except when he yells at me to get out of his room. Using this weird little goat puppet thing.
Rosalie in 1977's The Child is almost emotionless, except when she has outbursts of laughter at unusual times. She speaks very properly but bluntly, and asks questions or makes statements that are inappropriate. The titular Alice of Alice Sweet Alice 1976 is suspected of crimes she didn't commit because she has a history of behavioural issues, is prone to emotional outbursts, and doesn't fit in with her peers or family. She also has a creepy collection of creepy things, which is honestly just incredibly relatable. Damien from the OG 1976 Omen isn't really much of a character, to be honest. He's mostly pretty somber, he doesn't speak much. He's not actually in that many scenes, and he's like 5. Carrie from Carrie isn't autistic-coded at all, in my opinion, but her experiences are. Which is why I think I've seen a few autistic people online resonating with her. She is an outcast, disliked by her peers through no fault of her own. She doesn't understand things that are a given to others, and she struggles to regulate her emotions. The fear and eventual truth that people might pretend to like you for entertainment. She's an easy target, an OG lol cow. But of course, this is all explained by her abuse and neglect at the hand of her religious fundamentalist mother. But it is an experience unfortunately familiar to a lot of autistic people. I also watched a 2002 straight-to-TV remake of Carrie where they definitely autisticed her up a bit, in my opinion.
If they decide to run away together, I'll dance with you.
Oh my God, where'd you get that dress?
I made it.
Shut up.
You shut up.
Seriously, you made that?
I did. I like to sew. It's a real simple pattern.
Look at your ass!
What?
Oh, okay, now who's gay, right?
Niles in The Other from 1972 isn't really autistic-coded either. The movie was honestly pretty boring, and you could see that twist coming a mile away. Mikey from Mikey 1992 also isn't autistic-y in any way, but here we see the evil for no other reason but genes trope. He is willing to murder absolutely anyone at any time, his teacher theorizing that he's psychotic. Same goes for Henry in The Good Son. Yes, that's Macaulay Culkin and a baby Elijah Wood. Charming, manipulative, and evil for no apparent reason whatsoever. Just born bad. I also watched What the Peeper Saw from 1972. And that movie is Oliver from Oliver being like a baby sexual predator, and I just don't want to talk about it. I don't ever want to think about that movie ever again. Isaac from Children of the Corn 1984 is a 9-year-old preacher and the secondary antagonist of the film. He's not like the other Corn kids and speaks like an adult, which isn't surprising considering he's being played by a 24-year-old. Incidentally, the actor who played Isaac also played Cousin It in The Addams Family. There you go. All these old movies, though, with their high school setting and a cast with an average age of 26. I'm looking at you, Carrie. What the fuck is this? At least now when we get 20-something-year-olds to play teenagers, we can blur the shit out of them. Paying for a 4K TV and then they do this.
So about these mini little adults, what we find so creepy. Are autistic people serious and unemotional? No. Of course not. But it is something of a stereotype, a mischaracterization. When my mom said that I never really showed any real emotions, it didn't mean that I had none. It just meant that I expressed them in a way that was unexpected or not typical. And that certainly is an autistic trait. Unusual speech, posture, or gait is also an autistic trait. And being misunderstood by those around you is unfortunately an experience inherent to autism. Many of these creepy little kids also show some kind of heightened intelligence. And this is also another harmful autism stereotype. We are not inherently more or less intelligent than anyone else, and there are a million different ways to be intelligent. And so, yes, autistic traits are a feature of these horror movies, but even more so are autistic stereotypes, harmful stereotypes too of other neurodivergencies, other disabilities. But that's a subject for other videos. The way that people with intellectual disabilities are treated by horror is a topic all unto itself. But creepy kids, at least on the most part, do share something in common. Like, besides all the evil and murders and things.
There's a mature quality about her that's disturbing in a child. And
a child that isn't childlike enough is a threat. They can't be trusted. They are lacking in the innocence that we expect from children.
While researching for this video, I came across a series by The Monster and the Child by Dr. Kathleen Kellett, which delves right into this topic about childhood innocence as a cultural concept, and about which children get to shelter under the umbrella of innocence and which kids do not. It's a super interesting channel where childhood studies and monster studies collide. She goes into much more detail, and if you're looking for a reading list, that's the place to go.
When an autistic person masks, it can be seen as duplicity. When an autistic person doesn't speak, it can be seen as manipulation. When an autistic person misunderstands social cues, it can be seen as creepy. And when an autistic person has a meltdown, it can be seen as violence. And autism itself has been viewed in terms of a monster, a cruel entity that enters your house, rips apart your family, destroys your life, and possesses your child.
I am Autism. I know where you live. I work very quickly. I work faster than pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined. And if you are happily married, I will make sure that your marriage fails. I don't sleep, so I make sure you don't either. You have no cure for me. Your scientists don't have the resources, and I relish their desperation. I am Autism. I have no interest in right or wrong. I derive great pleasure out of your loneliness. I will plot to rob you of your children and your dreams. I will make sure that every day you wake up, you will cry. And the truth is, I am still winning, and you are scared. And you should be.
An evil child, a murderous toddler, it's as fantastical as ghosts. And it's an horrific idea because it speaks to multiple fears at once. To have an evil inside our home, inside our child, a corruption of all that should be loving and safe and familiar. It's an invasion, an intrusion, the adopted or older child becoming a danger to the baby, the potential horror of a child who doesn't understand the consequences of their actions. And then there's the eugenicist fear, the fantasy of tainted blood, the paranoia of unwittingly passing on dangerous genes. Many of these films were made when eugenics was incredibly popular, or when unscientific psychiatric explanations for behaviour fueled political cruelty. Horror can be a useful mirror of the fears of a culture, taking real-life concepts and turning them up to 11. And having a child can be a frightening thing.
Oh my god.
We've all seen that Autism Speaks video from decades ago, but you would not be forgiven for thinking that we don't still talk about autism like it's a monster.
These are kids who will never pay taxes, they'll never hold a job, they'll never play baseball, they'll never write a poem, they'll never go out on a date. We are doing this to our children. and we need to put an end to it.
Especially in the US, parents whose children have been diagnosed with autism are routinely threatened with all manner of terrible outcomes, pressured into enrolling their children in intensive behavior training courses, and then, once enrolled, threatened if they ever doubt the process.
But I was still really scared because it was what everybody around me recommended. It was what our doctors told us was best. It made it sound like it was the only choice that we had.
They are told that their child will never know happiness, never live a fulfilled life unless they make a sacrifice now. Horrendously expensive treatments that are weakly evidenced and potentially dangerous. We have seen countless initiatives aiming to defeat autism, pushing quack pseudoscience in the name of defeating the autism monster, even as autistic children were being killed. Autistic and otherwise neurodivergent children are still being killed, be it through dangerous treatments pushed onto parents by actual doctors in many cases, or through being restrained using unsafe techniques when all they needed was time to regulate their emotions, or through acts of infanticide. And lest we think that infanticide at the hands of doctors is a thing of the distant past, here's a discussion from 2006, when I was 19.
The single most important factor in discussions on withdrawal of treatment is the presence or predicted presence of severe intellectual disability. McAfee and Fowley found that mental disabilities were more influential than physical disabilities in treatment decisions.
Lest he live a life of idiocy.
Research into homicide incidents involving autistic children from the US from 2000 to 2019 showed an increase over time. In those 19 years, there were a total of 52 autistic victims, most of whom were boys.
Recent research indicates that children with autism are at increased risk of maltreatment. In previous studies, the most common sources of stress expressed by parents include uncontrollable child behavior and development, uncertainty in the etiology of ASD, financial costs, family relationships, uncertainty with the future, and accessing ASD-related services.
When we fearmonger about autism, when we tell parents that their children are doomed, cursed to never be able to participate in society or live full lives, when we pressure them into paying out of pocket for overpriced and ineffective treatments, a cost which only ever accumulates as these programs fail year after year, when we call their babies a public health emergency, and when we refuse to understand, refuse to learn, refuse to empathize with the autistic experience, othering it, monstering it, we create these exact conditions. Financial strain, fear of the future, feeling misunderstood, feeling unable to control their child's behavior. These are exactly the emotions that the current autism treatment industry perpetuates.
When the monster of otherness enters the horror movie home, either the child must die or the parent will. Either way, a sacrifice must be made. But autism isn't a monster, nor is it behaviour that must be controlled. We are human beings like any other, and we should not be othered. We are not demons or angels. We have no superpowers or curses. We are not creepy or weird. We are disabled people trying to navigate a society that only seems to consider us when seeking to eradicate us. People with intellectual disabilities are not subjects for our consideration. They are not a question which demands an answer. They are people who have always and will always exist, who are able to advocate for their needs and who need support in doing so. They don't need judgment or harsh decisions made on their behalf. Disabled people are used to being othered. And there's many more essays I could write about disability in horror, and maybe I'll even write them. Disabled children don't often get to shelter under the umbrella of childhood, of childlike innocence, as they must experience and endure trauma and pain and violence, things which few adults could easily handle. But then disabled adults become trapped under an umbrella of childishness, infantilized, their autonomy seized, and their abilities diminished. It's a double-edged sword. The eternal child, with none of the protections or shelter of childhood. I'm not here to call all creepy kid movies ableist or something. I just find it interesting to question what we find creepy and why, as well as our reactions to the things that we have deemed creepy.
Tin and Tina is a Spanish creepy kid movie from 2023 set in the early 80s, which I didn't really like at first, but it kinda grew on me, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it. These twins are the creepiest, almost ridiculously so. They were raised in a convent by a pretty hardcore nun, and they get adopted by this lady, who is honestly even creepier than the kids a lot of the time. Adolfo y Lola are a middle-class couple who had suffered a miscarriage of their twins, which had rendered Lola unable to conceive and suffering from depression. Adolfo gets sick of her moping, even though he's never there, and after 6 months suggests that they adopt a baby from the local convent. One nail drives out the other, he said. Stunning. But when they get to the convent, Lola is drawn towards some older twins who had given up on the idea of ever being adopted. They are called Tin and Tina, after Saint Augustine of Hippo, the theologian who first proposed the term original sin. The idea that we are all born in sin and need to do a bunch of church stuff to shake it off or whatever. But these kids are extremely, obsessively religious, taking a radically literal reading of the Bible. They get up to some heinous shit, and we see them doing it. There is no mystery. Nothing is really hidden. They do things openly and with an air of innocence, which makes it all the more creepy. They kill the pet dog after it bit their mum as part of a religious ritual aiming to cleanse its heart. They probably murdered their bully after he sinned the unforgivable sin. The most worst sin, according to the Bible, is blasphemy against the Holy Ghost. Apparently you can say what you like about Jeezy Creasy and the Big G and still be forgiven, but the ghost is off limits. Straight to eternal hell. Do not pass go. Do not collect anything. After hearing that their pregnant mother needs to stay in bed and rest, and being instructed to take care of her, they tie her to her bed and try to force feed her. When she refuses, they try to inject her pregnant belly with milk so that they might feed their brother. When the family votes 3-1 in favour of baptising the new baby, Tin and Tina try to do so themselves, almost drowning him in the pool. And in the end, after they had been returned to the convent, it is implied that they sneak back into the house and murder Adolfo. We hate him. Or did they? After waking up from smoke inhalation-induced unconsciousness, Lola is told by the nun that the children never left the convent, that they weren't in her house, that they had always been innocent. And Lola believes her and readopts these creepy little fucks. The internet is sure these kids killed their dad, but I think the movie makes it much more ambiguous than the Redditors are willing to admit. But the thing is, it is never clear throughout the movie that these children are evil. They seemed genuinely surprised and upset that the dog didn't just wake up with a nice clean soul. They tried to tell Adolfo that they were about to baptize the baby in the pool, but he cuts them off, more interested in the TV. And throughout the movie, They show genuine terror of the wrath of God and the destroying angel, from Killing All the Firstborn fame. They spend their whole lives living with this maniac who ensured that the children in her care were absolutely terrorized by the idea of divine punishment. And we see this fear in scenes when they're alone. Tin and Tina is asking some questions. Are these evil children intent on murder who are using the Bible to justify their sinful ways? Or are they innocent, taking overly literal interpretations of the Bible and suffering trauma due to their austere and abusive upbringing in the convent? Have they been so sheltered from reality that they simply don't understand the consequences of their actions? And, if we're honest, is that any less scary? These kids are creepy because of how they look, because of their obsession with religion. And they are dangerous, potentially through no fault of their own. Tin and Tina takes the creepy kid trope and at once intensifies and dismantles it. And that's why I like horror. Despite all of the questionable choices and lazy stereotypes, I'll keep watching it because of its unique ability to inverse, to take what is familiar and turn it on its head. Horror can shine a light on what and who in society we other, what we consider to be monstrous, so that we might examine it further in all the possible, hypothetical, fantastical, and extreme manifestations that we can think of. Horror is a way to explore the fuller range of the human experience than is usually allowed or desired. And I think I'd like to write more about it. So if you liked this exploration of creepy kids, then let me know in the comments and I'll get writing some more. There are ways down there for you to financially support this work. And there's a Discord server if you just want to hang out. Please do all the YouTube engagement clicky things. We're not lying when we say they help. And watch my other supernatural adjacent videos linked below. Yo, Samantha! And say goodbye, they're leaving. Oh, is that you leaving, is it? Oh, all right then. Oh well. Don't be a stranger, will you? It's a shame we didn't get a chance to catch up a little bit more, but, very busy today. Drive safely, and you're welcome anytime. All right. Okay. Cheerio.